They thought you were improving quietly, chasing balance, trying to become better like everyone else. What they didn't expect was domination. Growth, to them, means compromise, keeping one foot in the old life, one in the new. But you burned the bridge. You evolved past correction and into creation. You didn't fix yourself. You rebuilt yourself from the ground up. They see the surface, the calm, the posture, but they can't sense the voltage underneath. This isn't self-improvement. It's self-discipline turned weapon. You stopped seeking peace and started commanding it. You didn't learn to adapt to the world. You learned to make the world adapt to you. That's what scares them. You moved from trying to heal to making your wholeness non-negotiable. They call it arrogance, but it's mastery. They can't name it, so they call it dangerous. They used to know how to read you. They thought they could predict you because they remember the older version, the one that explained too much, that sought understanding. But this new version moves with silence and intention. You don't wait for permission anymore, you act. You don't speak for reassurance, you speak for impact. Every step you take feels calculated because it is. That's what they mistake for coldness. What they don't see is that behind that control is clarity. You've outgrown guessing games. You've replaced reaction with response. Growth makes you approachable. Domination makes you inevitable. You chose the latter. You're not trying to be liked anymore. You're trying to be unforgettable. The psychology of domination is misunderstood. It's not about overpowering others. It's about mastering the battlefield within. You learned that chaos doesn't disappear, it gets disciplined. You didn't kill your darkness. You trained it. You learned to move with both rage and restraint, like two sides of the same coin. That duality makes you unstoppable. They see the calm and assume you're at peace. But peace is an absence of war. It's the control of it. You decide when to strike, when to speak, when to vanish. You've turned emotion into intelligence, impulse into strategy. That's what terrifies them. They can't find the weakness anymore because you've made awareness your armor. You don't crumble when pressure rises. You expand. You change the rules without announcing it. They're still playing for survival while you're building for legacy. They chase comfort. You chase power, not over others, but over yourself. The discipline to stay calm when insulted, to stay still when provoked, to stay patient when underestimated, that's your real flex. You've learned that control isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself through reaction. You hold composure not to look superior, but to maintain direction. They don't understand that silence isn't absence. It's presence refined. When you stopped entertaining drama, you stopped being predictable. They lost access to your energy, and that loss feels like defeat. You no longer move for applause. You move for alignment. Your path became sharper. Your standards became higher, and your tolerance for nonsense disappeared. People call that harsh, but evolution doesn't apologize for speed. You stopped babysitting weak intentions. You started honoring effort. Every move you make now feels deliberate because it comes from purpose, not pressure. You've become the kind of person who scares people without trying. That's what domination feels like. It's calm, it's quiet, but it's absolute. You stopped chasing balance and built your own gravity. When you enter a room, energy shifts. Not because you demand attention, but because your focus radiates authority. You've turned presence into performance art. They're shocked because they thought healing would make you softer. They thought forgiveness meant passivity. But real healing gave you precision. You don't fight with words anymore. You fight with outcomes. You've learned that the most efficient revenge is excellence. You don't expose liars, you outperform them. You don't seek closure, you move beyond their reach. They expected a survivor. What they got was a strategist. The glow they thought would fade has turned into a glare they can't ignore. You stopped being relatable because you stopped repeating mistakes. That's the thing about domination. It isolates you, but it also liberates you. You've left the crowd not out of pride, but out of necessity. They can't reconcile your transformation because it doesn't fit their version of who you were. They used to define you through your wounds. They used to manipulate you through your empathy. But you've learned to keep your compassion private and your boundaries public. That inversion makes you untouchable. You no longer fight to be understood. You live to be undeniable. They still talk about the old you like a ghost story, warning others about what happens when someone stops caring about fitting in. You didn't ascend gently. You detached surgically. That's what makes people nervous. You became proof that reinvention isn't recovery. It's resurrection. You didn't return the same. You returned as consequence. You've noticed how people change when they can't use you anymore. The admiration turns into suspicion. The curiosity turns into gossip. The respect turns into fear. That's the price of reclaiming power. You force everyone to show their true form. You've stopped chasing fairness because you've realized fairness is subjective to the fragile. You don't owe comfort to those who thrived on your confusion. You don't owe forgiveness to those who built their peace on your pain. Domination is understanding that sometimes kindness has to die for self, respect to live. You've mastered the art of walking away without closing the door. Because you know they'll return when they need the energy they once drained. Your success became their crisis. Not because you flaunted it, but because it made them question their choices. You didn't just grow. You exposed stagnation. You became a reminder that excuses have an expiration date. You've turned accountability into power. They say you changed, but that's projection. You didn't change. You stopped pretending. You stopped entertaining false humility and called confidence by its real name, self-trust. The old you chased validation. The new you builds empires. You no longer exist to please, you exist to perform. And performance, when pure, looks like domination to those addicted to mediocrity. They hate admitting it, but you've become their reference for relevance. They compare themselves to you when no one's watching. They scroll through your moves quietly, pretending it's curiosity, not envy. They mimic your pace, your tone, even your restraint, hoping some of your gravity rubs off. You live rent-free in their ambitions, not because you flaunt success, but because you embody consistency. You've become the metric they measure their worth against. They don't want to praise you because acknowledgement would mean surrender. They'll call you lucky, connected, or privileged to disguise their discomfort. But beneath the performance lies a quiet truth. They can't stop thinking about how you keep winning without seeking validation. You've become their silent teacher, the one who exposes their shortcuts simply by existing. That's what terrifies them most. You never needed to announce your relevance, yet they still orbit around it. They monitor you like an algorithm. Every time you post, move, or speak, they recalibrate their identity. Their entire sense of direction depends on your compass. When you rise, they panic. When you disappear, they get louder, mistaking your absence for an opportunity to shine. You've conditioned them without trying to. Your evolution became the rhythm their ego follows. They hate the dependency, but they can't escape it. Because relevance isn't about being seen. It's about being felt, and they feel you everywhere. Even in silence, you dominate the atmosphere. You're not competing, yet they feel defeated. That's the psychological trick of influence. It's not about attention, it's about impact. They crave what you have, but refuse to admit what it costs: solitude, self-awareness, and control. You paid for your power with discipline, while they rent theirs with imitation. You never planned to lead, but you did by default. In a culture obsessed with appearances, your authenticity became revolutionary. They crave your composure because it exposes their chaos. They chase relevance through noise. You command it through silence. That difference cuts deep. They're addicted to proving. You're addicted to improving. They want recognition without mastery, fame without refinement, influence without integrity. You, however, learn to move deliberately, each step calculated, each word measured. You've become the model they study, but pretend to dismiss. They tell others they don't care about you, while rehearsing your patterns in private. That contradiction defines their downfall. You didn't seek the crown, but the kingdom followed your energy. That's the part they can't replicate. Your dominance was never a performance, it was evolution made visible. Psychologically, dependency hides behind denial. They deny watching you, deny envying you, deny that you've become their standard. Yet their behavior betrays them. You see it in their sudden changes, their attempts to mirror your timing, their obsession with relevance that started the moment you stopped seeking it. You've become a living paradox. unreachable yet everywhere. They build identities around reacting to you. You've entered their psyche not as competition, but as calibration. Every move you make resets their sense of direction. That's how quiet power works. You don't chase influence, you become the gravitational pull others can't escape. They want your blueprint, but blueprints mean nothing without belief, and belief is the one thing imitation can't duplicate. You built substance while they built spectacle. Their pride won't let them say it, but you changed the hierarchy. They used to lead conversations, now they repeat yours. They once mocked your discipline. Now they try to disguise it as inspiration. You can feel the shift in tone, how they talk about you with cautious respect, how they critique you just enough to hide their admiration. They hate that your standards force them to raise theirs. You didn't expose their weaknesses by attacking them, you exposed them by existing. They feel your presence in their hesitation, in their doubt, in their need to adjust every time you evolve again. They want to outdo you, but you keep changing the metric. You're not ahead because you move faster. You're ahead because you move with meaning. They build entire personalities around chasing relevance, while you became timeless by staying true to yourself. Their approach depends on external validation, trends, and applause. Yours comes from clarity. You stopped trying to be known and focused on being valuable. That shift is what created the divide. People forget trends, but they remember truth. You represent that truth, the version of success that doesn't depend on audience reaction. They hate that. They hate that your calm draws more attention than their noise. They can't comprehend that stillness can be more powerful than spectacle. You've shown them that relevance built on reaction dies fast. Relevance built on resonance lasts forever. And now they're trapped between envy and imitation, unsure whether to fight you or follow you. You can sense their tension. They try to stay composed when your name comes up, but the discomfort is loud. They measure their confidence in contrast to your existence. It's psychological warfare they started and already lost. They wanted to compete with you, but ended up competing with their own insecurity. You didn't even notice half the time because you were too busy executing. That's the part that drives them insane. Your focus doesn't require acknowledgement. You don't need the spotlight because you've already mastered the work that justifies it. They chase attention to feel alive. You chase precision to stay immortal. That difference can't be faked. It's not about who's louder, it's about who lasts. You've already proven endurance. They're still chasing applause. The narcissistic mind can't accept irrelevance. That's why they attach themselves to you like satellites. They orbit around your momentum, hoping proximity grants them power. You recognize it now. You can see it in the subtle mimicry, the recycled ideas, the desperate attempts to stay adjacent to your energy. But imitation doesn't grant understanding. They can borrow your moves, not your motive. You built everything through alignment. They built everything through approval. When approval fades, so do they. But your foundation remains. Their resentment comes from that realization, the painful awareness that your consistency has made you immortal in spaces where they're temporary. You didn't outshine them by force, you outlasted them by focus. They wonder how you keep reinventing yourself. They think it's strategy, but it's instinct. You grow because stagnation feels like suffocation. They stay the same because comfort feels like safety. You've learned that growth demands letting go of identity, while they cling to theirs like lifeboats in an ocean of irrelevance. You stopped trying to prove you belonged. You started creating things that outlive you. That's the line between legacy and relevance. One ends when the crowd forgets. The other continues when the crowd changes. They sense that difference, even if they'll never say it aloud. That's why they study you instead of confronting you.